you can either be stranded alone with a bear or with a man, who would you choose?
I think that there's a lot of pressure that when you give a woman an opportunity, she must be the most successful person there. Do you think a feminist is it's a bad word? Do you think that adding religion into the culture of Pakistan, do you think that mix is not working well? I just think that there's a really weird ego war going on between men and women right now.
Yeah.
The Infinite Perspective Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Infinite Perspective Podcast. I'm your host, Hamad Mustafa, speaking to you from Dubai. This episode has been long overdue, and I'm really excited. Today, I'm hosting Kiran Fatima, the host of up-and-coming podcast. She is actually responsible for introducing me to podcasting and many other people. She is honestly the best host that I've met in my life.
That's so sweet.
And a great person who I'm really lucky to know. She works as a consultant in emerging technologies, Web3, AR, VR, AI, etc. And I'm really excited on having this conversation with her today. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm so excited to be on your podcast. I'm so happy you started a podcast. You helped me build my podcast, and then ultimately I'm at a hiatus right now. But still, I'm so proud of your podcast. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much. And how does it feel to be in a studio after such a long time?
It feels interesting being a guest because you're just like, oh my God, what's the person going to ask me? Because I miss being the host because you kind of have the power and you already know where the episode's going to go as the host.
But that's the good thing because we know each other and we're so close.
Yeah.
It's like we're having a normal conversation.
It does feel like that, yeah.
Because with other guests, I'm going to be very honest with all the people that are watching. I zone out so many times because I'm trying to figure out what to say to the other person.
I know, and what to say next.
But it's not the case here. It's just we can be ourselves right now. There's not even cameras here.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, but no, I feel like even when we just have normal conversations, it's always like, this could have been a podcast episode.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you're Pakistani American.
Yes.
And you're a woman. And
I am.
You are exceptional in your career as well.
That's so sweet. Thank you.
And honestly, I say this to so many girls that I know and guys as well. Even for myself, I'm younger than you, but I look up to you career-wise and personal development-wise. And I want to know what prompted you to start a podcast in the first place.
So I listen to a lot of podcasts. So I just feel like we're in this era where I can't do music anymore. I feel like I'm listening to the same messaging in the music, the subtle messaging, which is either be in love or go to parties and get lit. So at some point I'm I feel like I'm poisoning my brain. So I started listening to a lot of podcasts, and I just think I'm a naturally curious person, and I just love asking questions. And this actually got prompted from when I moved here. Any person I'd meet, whether in whichever setting, professional, personal, I always would just ask them a bunch of questions, and I just felt like it was getting very interviewy. So I'm let me just make this a thing on the side and just, maintain my interpersonal relationships as normal. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just...
No, and I've always seen that, whenever we hang out, the sort of questions that you ask, it's always that moment where, you should start a podcast.
Yeah, and it's always a bit personal. So I'm okay, I know I can't just meet someone off at a coffee shop and be so what are your childhood traumas? But you can call someone to a studio, maybe even get paid if you're sponsored, and ask them these questions, and they'll happily answer it. So I'm actually just having a great time asking questions and learning about someone. And I think a lot of times, in my podcast, if I see anyone cool in Dubai, immediately DM them, and not even in a fan way or in a creepy way, just come on the pod, let's just have a conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, you're millennial.
Yes.
And I truly think millennials are the coolest generation ever.
I've never heard a Gen Z say that about us.
I know.
Yeah.
Fellow Gen Zs are going to kill me for saying that. But I say that because you guys right now are the working class. You're currently working. The economy is going to be on your shoulders in the coming decades and years, right? And I say that because I think companies are in the right hands with millennials.
Okay.
Because they are the perfect mix between being professional and open-minded at the same time.
Okay.
You don't always subscribe to conformity, in my opinion. So what do you think, working specifically with older peers and colleagues, do you see that difference where you're kind of more innovative and open?
Yeah. So I think that's interesting because obviously where I am, and I think most millennials right now, I mean, I don't know, the super successful ones are like CEOs, but if you're just talking about like, you know, in the corporate world, you are in middle management right now. So like you have like the older people. I don't know, are they boomers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sort of.
So the boomers that are still like above you, like your, you know, your managers or whatever. And then you have like the new Gen Z fresh graduates coming, and you can see that there's a huge disconnect between the Gen Z and like, you know, the person that's above me, because they just can't understand. So I feel like millennials are that weird middleman where it's like, no, I get it. Like, you know, you actually can't talk to someone like that. So we've actually been going through that at work recently, where some of our Gen Z hires are a bit, emotional.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, they'll have like, you know, emotional outbursts at work and everything's like super overwhelming. Yeah. But at the same time, I like that they're open. Like I just feel like to us, masking our emotions at work and then ultimately in any form of a relationship was a thing that we were taught. But I like that Gen Z doesn't do that and they just say what it is. Yeah. Is it annoying? Yeah.
and that's exactly what, like you said, I think it's a perfect mix because you're, again, open to innovation and new ideas, but at the same time, you do understand when to be professional. Whereas with Gen Zs, I think we had this conversation before. Yeah. We were born in a time where technology, instead of having like playing with dirt and grass like you guys did, we had iPads. Our attention spans are freaking destroyed, right? Yeah. We have so much brain rot, like terms that I can probably bring up, you're probably not going to understand, and not that you have to. It's just complete nonsense, right? And I think it's also very dangerous, sort of how we were brought up when technology was evolving at such a rapid pace. Yeah. And I think you guys were kind of saved from all of that.
Yeah, I agree, because I think the first time we all started hitting technology was these social media sites like Facebook and stuff came out I started using when I was like 14, 15, which also is young, but like now that's like not considered young. Like I think 3-year-olds all have their own iPads at home. They do, yeah. And that's scary to see. It is really scary.
I mean, one of my relatives, one of my little like newborn cousins when she was born, my aunt used to give her like the phone always whenever she used to cry, just to shut her up with like some kid games or something. And it got to a point where it's literally like an addiction, like a newborn toddler. If you take the phone away, she starts freaking crying. Yeah. Like you cannot control the kid. I know. Unless you give them the phone.
Yeah. But you know, there's this whole like parenting thing, because like most of these parents are millennials. And they, like, I don't know look, I'm not a parent, so I don't know what the right way is. I also feel like I would take the shortcut, which is if I cannot hear that voice nagging in my ear, here is the iPad, and we'll deal with the consequences as and when they come. Okay. I don't know. I'm with you, though, because as a third party, I'm like, you know, there should be a better way to teach your child than, like, hand them an iPad.
Yeah. No, that's true. And ultimately, I think we all suffer the consequences of excessive dopamine overload from...
Yeah. Do you delete your social media sometimes?
I mean, I should, but at this point I don't, because of everything that's the podcast, blah, blah, blah.
There was this interesting article that came out a while ago where it was like in Silicon Oasis, they do dopamine fasts.
Really?
And so what that means is you delete a lot of your social media, because that's where you get instant dopamine from. It's really hard the first couple days, but then after like a couple weeks, it feels really nice. Yeah. I've done it a couple times.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, where I just go like AWOL.
And for Gen Z, that's so uncommon that whenever that happens, I'm usually like really concerned that something happened. Yeah. I think I asked you that.
Yeah.
Like, are you okay?
And it's like, no, it's just like, it's just getting too much. Yeah. I don't need to know what like someone random is doing. Yeah. So do you like feeling connected?
I think I do, but I do understand the drawback that comes with it, like you're saying. Yeah. Sometimes it's so bad, like the scrolling on Instagram, I can literally feel my brain kind of rotting inside.
Yeah, especially at like those odd hours of night, right? Like why must you do it right before going to sleep or waking up first thing?
And have you read that article that says that it's actually called revenge procrastinating? Because when you've been working hard all day at your 9 to 5 job, et cetera, and you're stuck in traffic, et cetera, so your brain, it's kind of like you want that release, that dopamine, et cetera, and you're kind of making up for that at night, right? You know, you're taking the revenge for everything that was taken away from you. It's like an actual thing.
Okay, wow. I haven't read it, but I could see how that works. But still, it's just like you're undoing everything you probably did during the day.
Yeah, I don't know. Absolutely. Yeah, it's, I guess, you know how our parents, have your parents ever said like, when we were young, we had to walk all the way to school.
Yeah.
You guys have it so easy, you know. There's always this thing that parents say they've had to walk like 10 miles and all this. I've seen this in all cultures, right? My parents too, they used to be like, we used to go from Ajman to Dubai. That's how much distance it was.
Oh my God.
I don't know if it's true, but apparently every parent says that. But so they say that my parents and a lot of the parents that I know, they say if we had this technology, life would have been, we would have been much better off, etc. We would have been so successful. But then again, you ignore the challenges that come with technology. You know? Like it makes things a little bit too easy, you know.
Too easy. Like, do you think when you went to school, like, yeah, you had Google, but now kids have ChatGPT, and like, how does that make school, like, their level of schooling is obviously so much more easier, but then at the same time, I don't know.
Some of my friends graduated with ChatGPT.
Yeah, like it's a ChatGPT degree.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I asked them, it was computer science. I asked them, name 5 programming languages. They didn't know 5 programming languages. So.
Yeah, so I don't know which generation was smarter.
I think Gen Z's, like on the surface, it may seem like they're smart, but I think we are the laziest generation. You see hustle culture popped up with the Gen Z's, right?
That's true.
We escape the matrix, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. You need janitors, you need people in McDonald's, and there's nothing wrong with working those fields, right? Don't you think it's like a little bit degrading how, you know, in order to be successful, you have to first degrade the people that are working like, you know, usual jobs?
Yeah. I think it's more like do you think it's like a capitalistic point? Like, what is it? Like, it's like every trend has to start with, like you said, degrading something, making you feel like, oh shit, I have this. And then as a result, like, you know, I must not do this. So like, for example, in beauty trends, you know, they always have to make you feel insecure about something for you to then realize I should probably be insecure about this. And then they will sell you a product. And I think with escaping the matrix, it's like men, and I think it was a lot. Is it a huge like men thing, or is it like everyone?
I think it's a huge men thing.
Okay, yeah. It's because these men are like working hard, you know, hustling, providing for their families or their dreams or whatever. Anyone, it doesn't have to be a man. Why is this shortcut more like considered better?
And you know, it's not just the money that comes with it. It's also supplemented with women. Like if you get rich, like Andrew Tate, and these people, they're like, if you get rich, they advertise the fact that you're gonna get women as well.
Yeah.
Which I think you're treating women as an object, really.
Yeah, as a commodity.
I know a lot of people are probably gonna get messed up and call me a feminist because of this, but it's just common sense. Like you.
Do you think a feminist is like it's a bad word?
No, definitely not. But I think I think being an activist could also be considered. Like you're essentially an activist, but there's right and wrong as well. What's your definition of feminism or a feminist?
Oh, this is a hard one because I always feel like I get the definition wrong, but I know in my soul what it is.
Whatever the definition is, what do you think is a feminist?
I just think all women want, at least in my opinion, what I think the feminism movement is about is it's not being treated equally. It's as being seen as a human being at the same caliber as you. So if you have emotions, I also have emotions. And just looking at us with a human lens, which I think, like you said with Andrew Tate and all of that, women are looked at as a commodity. That is not the human lens of it. So I think that's literally what it is.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think people are also commoditizing themselves?
How so?
So you can sell yourself for a subscription, and that is becoming very popular these days.
Do you mean just even YouTubers, or are you talking about like OnlyFans or what?
Yeah, OnlyFans.
Okay.
And that to me is very alarming because these people are going to become parents. Whatever you say, of course, it's their choice, right?
Yeah.
But just like how, these red pill guys are selling courses, which I think it's kind of dehumanizing like normal people working 9 to 5s, right? It's the same thing that these women are doing, is kind of harming themselves because you are going to have families, and it's not exactly something.
I feel like I have thoughts that people don't agree with when it comes to this.
Okay.
But my opinion on it is, look, I don't divulge with OnlyFans, and I like to think that a lot of people I hang out with or associate with don't really divulge in OnlyFans. So that's just the base statement. But what I've read about it is prostitution to some degree is not the funnest field to be in.
Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to say is, with OnlyFans, I've been reading a lot of things about it, and it's a platform where you can provide a service while being in a safe environment for the person that's providing the service. Okay. That's what I've read about it. So if this is a way for legal sex workers to be in a safer environment and get more money than actually having to provide services, I understand that part of it. I do agree with you where it's like now they're glamorizing it, and I think the glamorization is the downfall. Sex workers will always be there. They're in the city that we live in where you're recording this podcast, and they're in every city in the world. So if there's a way for them to get some form of legal remittance, if that's the correct word, good for them. But I think it's the glamorization which is the issue for younger girls.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah. And I'm not, again, don't get me wrong, I'm not specifically saying the women are at fault. I think it's more so the men, because that
the people that are watching them and giving them the platform.
Demand, supply, right?
Yeah.
The glamorization is exactly where I agree with you.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, it's always going to be there. And there are governance studies that say that if you legalize something that is stigmatized, you actually streamline and regulate it where it's safer for people, right?
Yes.
I do understand. Not that I think that it should be legalized or I think it's right, but I think in general, all human beings need to be safe.
I agree.
Right?
I agree. And whatever your job is, you should be safe. You should be getting the money that you're working hard for in whichever capacity. So we also know that there's a huge pimp culture and all of that, and then they don't get money. And there's a lot of movies, documentaries all about it. But now like the glamorization is what's off, because now you see women that don't necessarily need to be sex workers, that don't need it for the money, and probably don't have that level of, for example, like Bonnie Blue. I don't know if you've been following her, like sleeping with 100 men. I don't think we all need to be seeing that. But again, they're making a lot of money. So then that's the debate. If that's how she chooses to earn her money, who are you and I to talk about it?
I think the nuance here is exactly the fact you look at, okay, these people are doing this thing, but if the demand wasn't there, this would not be... Yeah. Like, no one would be doing this for no freaking reason, because you do understand that it does come with a degree of shame, right?
Yes.
And stigma. And I think if we are having this conversation, it's equally important to hold men accountable as well.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think this is just common sense. This is not me taking anyone's side.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
It's just completely common sense. I think this can take us to the other side, where you've heard of this wild question, who would you choose?
Yeah.
If you were alone, you're a woman, okay, or your daughters, or you're alone in a forest or a stranded island. You're stranded in an island, and you can either be stranded alone with a bear or with a man. Who would you choose?
1,000% a bear. Like 1,000 without a doubt. I didn't have to think about it twice. And it's interesting that every single woman doesn't have to think about it twice. One of the most, there's a quote where the most dangerous person a woman will meet in her life is her husband. Because whoever you're in a relationship with, and it doesn't have to be husband, has the capacity to really choose the trajectory of your life. A lot of women are killed because of their husbands. A lot of women are in physical and mental anguish because of who they choose as their life partners, or just because of some form of a man in their life. So I would choose the bear, because the worst that a bear can do is kill you. The worst that a man can do, I think the best thing a man can do if he plans to kill you is to literally just kill you. But the torture that men that we've seen can inflict on women it's scary. I don't know if you've been following that case in France, where that woman, she's married to a man for I don't know how many years. Her name's Giselle, and her husband has not only raped her, but has brought in so many men to rape her while she's unconscious over the course of, I think, 25 years. And now that court case is publicly in France. And these men were her neighbors. They were and he would drug his wife every night, or whatever nights he would do that. And men also as fathers are scary. Men as brothers can be scary, because you can be living in a house and there can be a lot of atrocity just because of your brother being a certain way. So, I think there's a huge level of fear when it comes to that.
I think the intelligent way to approach this is with empathy, right? A lot of men would get pissed off they're like, okay, but I'm not like this, right? And I actually wanted to ask you about the statement, not yes, all men. That happens whenever there's a case like this, if certain activists say yes, all men. And I think from my perspective as a man, of course, statistically speaking, you're probably safer with the men. But then again, the detail in this is, why are we committing acts to even be compared with the bear? Because like you said, we can be literally more dangerous than the bear. The bear's not going to do the things that you just described. Right? It's just probably going to eat you, rip your limbs off, whatever.
And then that's it.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
The man can be cunning. They can lie. The bear can't lie.
Yeah.
The bear can't speak.
Bear can't manipulate you.
If it's hungry, it's just going to eat you. It's not going to manipulate you, right? It's not going to pretend that it wants to help you, and it's not going to do that. Women can do that too, but then there's no comparison whatsoever in the magnitude that it happens
of course.
on men's side, right?
Yeah.
So in general, I think someone approaching this question, probably watching right now, is going to be like, oh, you're stupid. It's just, of course you're safer with the man, right? Men aren't animals. But then again, the things that you hear, the stuff that happens in wars, the stuff that happens on a daily basis in many countries, with women and with men. It's freaking men that are doing it. It's not bears. Right. And I think that's exactly why this question, and that's why it's kind of like really, it has a depth that you really need to understand, that you need to reach in order to understand.
I think also it's not like these are news stories or like TikTok videos that I'm watching and I'm like randomly getting this information from. I think most women, I would say all women, kill me on a limb here, have people in their life where they've seen this amazing woman turn into something because of a man. Now it can be because she died because of a man. It can be her like spark got diminished because of a man. It can be she is now fully like, depressed because of a man. We've seen it. We've seen it. We have personal experiences.
I see. Do you think chivalry is dead? And chivalry in itself, do you think it's like a connotation towards like a certain degree of misogyny? Because I have heard some people be like, why do you have to open the door for me? I can do it myself, Do you think that's fine? Or do you think that's like...
I just think that there's a really weird ego war going on between men and women right now.
Yeah, true.
It's weird. Do I think chivalry is dead? Yeah, I do. I do, because I don't see it. I think it can be used on one or two dates to like impress you, but then I think over the course of like a 30-year marriage, I don't see the chivalry last. I haven't seen it last. So I think it's been dead for a while. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think it's something to be offended about? Because some people do get offended about it. About the fact that, like, why do you need to open the door for me?
I think the offensive part is that the chivalry aspect has died, but a lot of the expectations that a woman must be in a relationship have lived centuries.
Yeah.
If anything, they're getting elevated and escalated with each century, or with each generation. So a man maybe back in the day would open a door for you, make sure that your meals are paid for, XYZ, and the woman would provide for your family, like, in the house, all of that. So now the man doesn't do all that, but the woman is doing that and now opening her own door, driving her around, driving herself around, paying for her own meals. So I just think that there's a lot of burden on women right now. And the least we could expect is if we bring back a little bit more chivalry. Yeah. And
so you think more of it would actually be good?
Yeah. And I just think it should be in your natural instinct. Like, I don't understand where this weird ego war is coming from. I really don't understand. I just think a man, if you don't want to open a door for your spouse, who do you want to open the door for? And why would you want to open it for that person? So, yeah.
And by the way, for maybe some people who don't understand, we're using opening the door as like as a scenario overall, as a substitute for like greater actions that you can probably take.
Absolutely.
Like then you have the question of splitting the bill, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess the point that I'm trying to make is some people, I guess neo-feminism has this idea where, like, for total equality, I do not want to, for you to pay the bill. I'd rather split the bill. And I would get the door myself, because there's symbolic misogyny there where you're saying that, okay, I need to be protected because I'm weaker than you. And I kind of disagree with that because we do need to account for, of course, there are physical differences between men and women.
Absolutely.
And that is absolutely fine. That does not make you inferior to me.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
Rather, for us, it's something that we have the responsibility where we need to protect you, and you have the responsibility of, nourishing or nurturing, right?
Yes, agreed.
That's like the natural roles. Wouldn't you say that's true?
I think what's most important in all of this is to understand what is it that your partner is asking you? Because I feel like for some reason, and this is where I go back to my ego wars again, it's like we're not communicating and everyone is deciding that this is the stance I have and this is how I'm going to move forward in life. And if I manage to find someone that accepts it, good for them. Otherwise, this is how I'm going to move forward. If your partner wants to split every bill and that genuinely makes them happy and they feel like they're slapping feminism in the face or like misogyny is like going like crying for help, let them. But if you can tell through subtle messaging, or your partner clearly says, I would love for you to pay for me, and you're still listening to that being like, I don't agree because I just think we're making the same amount of money XYZ, then I think this issue has nothing to do with feminism and has everything to do with the both of you probably aren't compatible. And I just think that that's what's happening. We're using feminism or these arguments as a basis for compatibility or not. And a lot of people will then, and a lot of women actually will then hold back their actual emotions and be like, okay, it's fine. Like actually men in these days, they don't do that anymore. So we shouldn't expect that anymore. But why not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think to a certain degree, feminism does come off as a red flag to certain men.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, okay, there's a potential link with this and probably narcissism as well, is what some men kind of think. But then again, you need to also acknowledge that the women that are probably behaving this way, where they're like really exaggerated in their outlook of equality, is because probably they went through some really bad experiences in life.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, evaluating the person and seeing, let's try to understand why is it that she's obsessed with paying the bill. I think there's just there's a lack of understanding going on right now with the ego wars. Yeah. And so everyone just wants to put out what they have and then that's it. But do you think that leads to the male loneliness epidemic that we're going through? Do you feel like there's a male loneliness epidemic?
No, I think definitely.
Even in your friends group in this side of the world in the UAE?
100 billion%.
Even though, okay.
Billion%. It's a big problem. Probably more so in the UAE because there's a huge difference between the ratio between men and women. It's 70%
the gender disparity is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. But in general, I think, yes,
But I would ask you why, only because the culture we come from, right? I think it is so easy to be a man, and I don't mean this in an offensive way.
Oh, it is.
If I'm a young man and I really want to get married and I feel super lonely, I'm just going to go to my mom and be like, find me a girl, and she's going to find me a rishta, and then I'm going to get married. It doesn't really matter. I think the girl's pretty, hot, cool, she can cook, boom, I'm married. So how is there still a male loneliness epidemic?
So, okay.
Do you think the girls are getting smarter? The girls don't want to marry you guys anymore? What's going on?
I think in our culture, because there's that artificial intervention where families can kind of have arranged marriages, we don't really have it in that exact sense, that male lonely epidemic. But even if you're supplementing the issue with arranged marriages, it's still artificial, technically.
I agree.
It's not organic. If you want to look at perhaps a more accurate picture, the West is kind of a much better example, where, incel culture never used to exist.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
Right? And it's gross. And I think a lot of people that I know have gone through this phase in their life,
Do you get violent in incel culture? Can you tell us, is it the opposite of feminism, or what is it?
Okay, honestly, even I have never been able to wrap my head around it, because there's this certain degree of desire, but at the same time hate for women, because you know that you're not going to be able to get this person because they would not like you for who you are. I've seen some people call themselves incels. I don't know why that would be the case. It stands for involuntary
celibates.
Yeah. So I just think it's a very weird concept, and definitely there is an epidemic right there.
Yeah.
do you think people are getting too offended too easily these days? Like, you never had these terms, green flags, red flags, when our parents were around, or gaslighting, or ghosting, etc. Do you think, like, perhaps people are getting way too sensitive?
Okay. I've read some psychologists say that people are learning about these terms and then harping on it and, like, spreading misinformation.
Oh, yeah.
To some degree, obviously, if you're a psychologist, I think you're accurate. But my genuine depiction of this is there's a lot of things we've seen growing up that we couldn't quite term it and coin it, but we felt like it was wrong, but we didn't quite know why. And now we have a term for it. Yeah. I think we've all felt like we've been gaslit by someone, whether it's in a relationship or a friendship or anything. What's another good one? Like you said, green flags, red flags. I think it's a really great way. I hate that word, toxicity, because I don't know if you can really call someone toxic. Okay. I think if we start calling everyone toxic, then that's just feeding into our own ego, and then you're just are you not toxic? Like, as in yourself, like, am I not toxic? So I don't know if I agree with the toxic part, but I think red flags, green flags, I think it's all helping people figure out, women, I think especially, figure out, like, what's been maybe happening to them for a while. Okay,
to add another term to give you more context is, remember, we had this conversation a long time back where there's this concept of icks.
Yeah.
So some women get icks.
Yeah.
Apparently from really, like, small things. Mm-hmm. Like, if you can't find parking, that's an ick, right? So what I'm trying to say is, I agree with you absolutely on the fact that now we all felt we had these issues when we were younger, when these terms didn't exist. Now we have names for them, and now we can, like, now they're real. Yeah. Like, now they're actually real. You can give them a name, right? So when you do it in excess, don't you think that becomes, like, you're hyper analyzing, overcomplicating things?
Oh yeah, 100%. And you'll see someone that hyper analyzes every situation. I don't know if they can quite move forward. Yeah. I think it's fun and games, listing a bunch of icks. And some people have genuine icks, and I understand that. But I think if you just harp onto this culture too much, you're going to probably, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, the word toxic, like, have you ever noticed the fact that anytime you ask someone about, like, a friend that they're no longer talking to, they had a fight with, or a relative, or their ex, whatever, it's always the ex that's toxic.
Yeah.
Like, always.
Or the relatives that are toxic.
Or the relatives, or whatever, right? But, okay, if you go to the ex or the relative, you ask them, they're probably going to say the other person's toxic. Like, so who actually is toxic? Like, how do you actually determine if you're in the right or in the wrong? Because now, if you're giving labels, it's like you're the judge and the jury in itself, right?
And I think if you're calling someone toxic, you could also be toxic. Yeah. Because if you were truly not, you wouldn't point out that this person is and I'm not. So just hang out with me and I'm on the right side of history. So I agree. I just think it's just another way of, like, name calling, if anything. I really think toxic is another way of name calling.
Yeah. And I think it's just pop psychology has just made jumping to conclusions so accessible to everyone now.
Yeah. Do you feel like with your, like you said, like, friendships and all that are toxic, are there some things you've learned about your life via social media that maybe haven't come yet, but you know that this is something that might happen? So, for example, you're in your early 20s, I'm in my early 30s. And so one thing that tends to happen is you have friendship breakups. Maybe you don't know about it yet, but it's something you're going to experience in this decade. Are there other things you've heard of or that you're learning through via social media?
Honestly, yeah. Like, for example, the thing about, like, for example, ghosting, that thing's, like, a big thing in our friends. Like, I've been accused of ghosting my friends. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm genuinely not doing this. Yeah. And gaslighting, yes. Like, it's been, like, you accuse and get accused of these things all the time. And I just think it makes people feel like they're qualified enough to, like, point out shit. Yeah. When we're not actually qualified. We're not psychologists.
At all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it kind of goes wrong with people on TikTok. Like, it's just,
I could see that.
Attachment styles. Okay, what's your attachment style? That's, oh shit, we're not compatible. Yeah. But, like, how do you know that? Yeah. Like, are you an actual psychologist?
Do you also think what people self-diagnose their attachment style is real? Like, do you think that you are anxious or avoidant, or do you think you should go to someone and figure out, or ask your partner what they think you are?
I think you should just be yourself. Like, being avoidant does not give you an excuse to like ignore people.
Yeah.
Like
It doesn't.
You can't just.
Yeah.
Okay, so another thing, like if I think I have, a lot of people diagnose themselves with ADHD.
Yeah.
Okay, you may have ADHD, but that does not give you an excuse not to like study and do shit.
Yeah.
Like I've seen little people that use this as an excuse.
That's all of America.
No, I mean I just think you shouldn't limit yourself with terms, or
I agree.
label people a little bit too much. Like if you for sure see someone like an actual narcissist, you will know who's an actual narcissist. Like if someone has some sort of a mental disorder, or is antisocial or psychopath. Okay, I'm not going to talk about psychopaths because they're very manipulative, but a narcissist, you'll know who's a narcissist. Like you're not going to have two opinions on it.
Yeah.
It's going to be absolutely true.
Even though they give like the top 5 signs of a narcissist, like, you know, you can self-diagnose yourself and be like, am I not? But then I think this is what's happening where people are only diagnosing themselves like the positive things or like the other things, but not like, you know, do I have traits of a narcissist? Do I have traits of an avoidant? What can I do? Because I think sometimes you think of yourself as something, but someone else sees you in a different lens.
Yeah.
So it's really weird to understand which one you are.
I mean, there's this Japanese proverb, I believe, where you have 3 faces.
Okay.
It's one face is the one that you show to the general public, any like random person that you meet on the street. There's another face that's hidden inside you that you show to your family and close ones. And then there's a third face that only you know about yourself. So that is true in any case.
I agree.
My approximation, so you, in my head, is based on subjective observation.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
in your mom's head is based on subjective observation, much more experience than what I've had with you, right? So you are 2 different people in different people's heads.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
But then you wonder whose opinion then you should be listening to. Because then no one really knows the real you.
I think, when Shakespeare said all the world's a play, he was really true. Because we are all really kind of pretending.
Yeah.
That's how society works. I am doing a podcast. I'm trying to be a podcast host. I'm pretending. Like, what truly is a podcast host? Like, it's not an objective thing.
Yeah.
But I'm trying. When, for example, if you're a real estate agent, you're just doing your job. You're just pretending, trying to be there.
Yeah.
With, my dentist, I notice these patterns with them where they try to seem professional and they use the same terms. There's this like formula. It's all like the same. It's all the world's kind of a play and we're all actors in it.
Yeah.
I think that really is what is the case in my opinion.
That's interesting. But then do you think that kind of falls with imposter syndrome?
What's your opinion on imposter syndrome though?
I used to have it a lot.
Okay.
And I think everyone does when you're younger. I think if you're thrust into a situation that you've never been in. So, for example, if you're fresh out of school and then you enter the corporate world and now all of a sudden people are using like these words you've never heard, acronyms, like seeming super confident, super passionate, and you're just like, what are you guys saying? Yeah, you have imposter syndrome because you're like, I don't fit in here. These guys are going to realize real quick that I have no idea what I'm saying. After a couple years, I think when you really believe that you have proved to yourself, I think it's really something that you prove to yourself. If at some point you start believing I deserve to be here, whatever that is, whether it's in a relationship, in a podcast, or at work, that imposter syndrome will disappear. And then I think then you actually believe you are what you are.
Yeah.
So do you think with podcasting you've hit that?
Honestly, I don't. I get nervous every episode.
With real estate, have you hit it?
I think honestly with anything that has to do with dealing with people, there's always that uncertainty. Bear man analogy, right? Where humans are unpredictable, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm editing a video, it's always the same process. I can trust myself. I know, okay, what's the outcome is gonna be.
Yeah.
But if I'm selling a property to someone, from hosting a podcast, talking to you, I can never really predict what the other person is gonna do, right?
That's true.
Like that level of uncertainty always brings a certain amount of doubt.
Yeah.
But you have to get good enough to have like a baseline level of confidence. And I think I have hit that. With at least
think you
some
have.
things, yeah.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not with so many episodes that I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, you get to it at a certain point.
What do you think of imposter syndrome?
I think it's real. So there was this one guy, this lady asked him a question, and it was an event, and he was a speaker at the event, and a lady asked him a question about imposter syndrome, in podcast hosting, and he was like, what is that? And she's like, doubting yourself, blah, blah, blah. It's like a real thing. It's a medical term.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm confident. Like, I've never felt it. I'm super confident. I don't have these fears and doubts like weak people. And then she's like, it's not something that weak people have. Like, you can be a billionaire. You can be like a PhD, but still have it. Those people still have it. And he's like, I don't have it. Do I need to discover it? And she's like, okay, then never mind. And like that room was completely silent. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I understand this man's probably trying to show that he's really confident and strong and alpha male, whatever. But it is something that needs to be acknowledged. You could be all of the above, but still suffer from the same thing. You could be like an alpha male influencer who says that depression is not real.
Yeah.
But if just the right amount of chemicals in your brain shift, you are doomed. You're going to know what real terror and fear is. You're going to feel hell on earth. It's not just working out. Of course, leading a healthy life is ultimately going to make you healthier, but there are things not in your control. And I think it's important to realize that.
That's true. That's true. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Being a Gen Zer, walk me through the epidemic that Gen Z is going through, which is, why are you guys getting married so early, and why are millennials getting skipped?
I honestly have no idea. I don't know. I think there is this sense of traditional reconciliation with Gen Zs, where we're trying to go back to the traditions and be normal. Okay, that sounds like millennials messed up and Gen Zs are kind of learning from them. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying in general, I think Gen Zs are kind of realizing that it's better to get your shit together.
I think like every generation is the opposite of the one before them. And I think for millennials, our version of freedom was wait till you're like, focused on XYZ, focus on your career, focus on this and that. And now we're like, wait, why are these like 20-year-old kids getting married? It's wild.
It is. But I mean, I guess success, the definition of success really depends on, are you content?
Yeah.
Like, you could be content with a hut in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Or you could be content with a Ferrari, whatever. It depends on what your definition of it is, right?
Agreed.
If you're being content with being married at 20 something, you could also be content with not being married at a certain age. It really depends on what you want.
Agreed. I think we looked at marriage as something more solid, and maybe you guys are just like, it's casual, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Or like we feared it more.
And I've seen this to be the case. Generally successful women that at least I've seen in my life, there has this pattern being they're not married. And I've been talking to some family members about this, and they actually praise this. They're like, that kind of grants, I'm talking specifically about our culture in Pakistan, where not being married does grant you that freedom to be successful.
The freedom to grow into whatever you want to be. Yeah,
exactly.
Without someone like stifling you maybe at an earlier age.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But do you think at the same time it's kind of giving this rise to the idea of alpha females?
I don't know what alpha females mean. Like, I don't know what that means.
Because I don't think I've ever heard someone say this term before. So let's kind of dissect it a little bit.
Okay.
Alpha female is probably someone who I would characterize as who believes...
Is it girl boss?
Yeah. Like, who believes that being married is probably not a great decision to make. Okay. And just... I don't want to use the word... But there is a certain degree of selfishness, I think, that comes with it. But then again, we are all selfish actors in life. Yeah. Even if you decide to have a family, that is a selfish decision because it is bringing you contentment, right?
Yeah.
So why is the pattern persistent in women that become successful, but then you see men who are more successful and they tend to have larger families and they're more than involved, with having a large family, etc. But the opposite is true with women. So
I think the biggest thing to see here, or a pattern that you're noticing, and I think a lot of us notice it, is that women really have to sacrifice a lot when they get married. And these sacrifices are very small, whether you have a family, whether you don't have a family, whether you only have a husband. A lot of times you are sacrificing a lot of who you are to make this work. And the burden, there's an emotional burden of a marriage that tends to be on the woman. I think the financial burden sometimes is on the man, but now, like we said earlier, it's getting shared. So there's a lot of burden on a woman. So if you mix that with then being like, super successful at your career, I think you'll find fewer women that can take up that level of a challenge, because to me, that doesn't sound that exciting. If you're telling me I have to make sure my marriage works and I have to make sure the kids do X, Y, Z, and on top of that, I have to make sure I'm going to be a partner at this age, like that just is not a dream I tend to have. If you could make marriage seem less work and more to my benefit, I think also a lot of women would be succeeding in the workplace. I think marriage for men is very beneficial. For women, it's a sacrifice.
I agree with that. And it is so again, it is a sacrifice, but you do get contentment out of it, depending on whether you think marriage brings contentment. But it is something that you do need to sacrifice for. Men, not so much.
Yes.
You're married or not married, you're going to have to earn either way. So,
do you agree with that statement?
I do. And it's coming from a sense of empathy. If I just look at it on the surface level, then that probably just sounds like something someone looking at this from a surface level would probably say, like, what sacrifice? But then again, like, if you go dive deep, then there are sacrifices that women do have to make in marriages. But I guess more so about the alpha female thing, there's a research that says, so you know what vocal fry is?
No.
So like if I start talking really low, you're gonna hear like this fry in my voice, like it's really low. Okay. So according to research, more women have started to talk in vocal fry, meaning trying to appear more assertive, dominant, masculine.
Okay.
Subconsciously. So this is not a conscious level decision. Pitches of women in the corporate world, vocal pitches are going down, like lower.
Okay.
Right? So that appears to be a way to mirror men in the power dynamics that you see in the corporate world. But then according to another research, based on a large sample of women in America, if you are using vocal fry and speaking in a lower pitch, you are less likely to be liked and to be hired by both men and women.
Wow.
And it is an actual pattern. You can actually see this with some very famous female celebrities as well, where their pitches have gone down with how they speak.
That's really fascinating. I think it's sad that for women to conform into the workplace and for us to be, maybe for our word to be taken more seriously, we have to start honing or harnessing these weird, subtle things, such as make our voice, the decibels be a bit lower, or dress a bit more masculine. I know a lot of girls that there's this thing going around with the office siren, which is you can't dress it a certain way at work. Otherwise, you won't be taken seriously. You can't maybe let a couple of white hairs grow out, maybe let your hair look a bit disheveled so it looks like you've been working hard. So I think it's sad that the workplace doesn't have a space for you being a bit more feminine. And so as a result, what does that mean? You can either be neutral, or then you have to result to being a bit more masculine or having those attributes. And then it's hard to leave that in the workplace and then to then be married and then have to be the super feminine person. And it's just like you said, there's too many masks that are expected to be put on. When you can just show up in the same outfit you have on, you can go to a work event, you can go to a date, you can go to a wedding, a funeral. You can't go on a date in the outfit that you're probably wearing at work versus I don't know, like a baby shower and all of that. So
and I think that's kind of like the opposite of empowerment, because if you have to emulate more so men
to be taken seriously,
that's not empowerment in my opinion. And I've actually felt this. I've noticed this on the conscious level, but I've never really thought about it that much. If you notice, many high level, high profile politicians, businesswomen in the West, they actually have shorter hair.
Wow.
I've never really understood why, but it kind of seems to come on the surface.
Yeah, females, because it's also I think that's true. I think it is emulating somewhat of a more masculine presence. I think if you see a girl whose nails done, hair is done, eyelashes looking very fine, you just tend to think she focuses more on her appearance and maybe she doesn't have much of a mental presence, or maybe she's not that, mentally agile. So you kind of, it's these vocal or verbal cues or visual cues.
And I think it's such a 180-degree conversation from when we take the shift from the West to our own culture.
Yeah.
Because then the definition of feminism itself changes. If you ask me within Pakistan if I would consider myself a feminist, then I would say yes. I want women to have the right to opportunity, the right to equal opportunity, and to be treated fairly like every other person, like a human being. In the West, there's like a little bit of a different definition of it. And in that regard, do you think that feminism gets weaponized sometimes?
To who?
Towards men. Okay, so this is not related, but this is just something that I think is kind of a double standard. Hitting any person, you think it's wrong, right?
Yeah.
But even in Hollywood, which is a very progressive cinema, you see regularly men getting slapped. Have you ever noticed that? You won't see women getting slapped now in like comedy films or anything.
Okay.
It's going to be considered wrong.
I mean, I think generally I've always seen like a woman slapping a man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't you think that like there's some sort of a double standard where like the things that go wrong with how sometimes some women treat men is kind of overlooked?
Look, maybe. I don't think that. I think usually whenever I've seen a woman slap a man, it's like a weird symbolic thing. I don't think it's like look, this is like a domestic violence situation.
Okay.
It'll usually be because and again, these are the movies or the scenarios I've seen it in. The man will say something absolutely appalling. The only reaction, instead of vocalizing how disgusted you are, is a slap in the face.
Yeah.
So I've never personally slapped anyone. Just want to say that. I don't think that that's really promoted slapping culture. So really, I have no comments on that.
Right. If you could delete one societal norm within our culture, Pakistan specifically, what would it be?
A societal norm within Pakistani culture.
You can be as controversial as you want.
I think because we're talking about like female male role, I think it would be around the way that you raise your daughters. I think one of the norms, which is when you have a daughter, it's kind of considered a sad event. I'd love for that norm to be gone. I know a lot of dramas which are addressing it. But I also think just the right for your daughter to live a happy life, whatever that means. And not,
A happy life, yeah.
Yeah, whether that's like she's educated, she's married, she's not married. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of pressure that when you give a woman an opportunity, she must be the most successful person there. So like, if you're giving me the opportunity to study in America, I must be a 4.0 student and getting straight A's and working and hustling and being so grateful for this opportunity. And that's the only way you can justify giving me that opportunity. Whereas I feel like for men or your sons or whatever, it's just like, okay, it's fine. Just coast. Like, you'll figure it out. So I just wish that you could just put everyone at the equal level. Like, you don't have to make a woman work for it harder for you to justify giving her something. And I think that comes everywhere in the workplace, in education, and anything.
Do you think it's changing positively in our culture? Do you see that? Have you felt that change?
No, I actually haven't. I actually think it's going down the drain.
Really?
I do think a little bit. I think I just see a lot of girls that I grew up with, and because we've nestled them into their homes and just been like, your home is your safe haven. I just I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. Do you think?
Okay.
Our culture is like...
in terms of our media, I think it's doing an okay job at addressing this. And I think it really has to do with education. So naturally, whenever a country has economic growth and you see better education, these sort of things used to exist in the south of the United States as well, right? Inequality, not treating women, like how you would treat men. But it goes away as you get more educated. So within the middle class of Pakistan, and it's the middle class of Pakistan is bigger than the population of Germany. I think most people are mildly conservative, but still very open. There is a very loud extremist minority.
Okay.
But I think it does get blown out of proportion. Is there progress to be made? Yes, lots of it. But I think it will change over time.
I have a question. Do you think that adding religion into the culture of Pakistan, like, do you think that mix is not working well?
I think it's the culture that's really the problem, because in Islam, whether you have a child being born who's a son or a daughter,
Yeah.
it's equal. Like you being sad over the fact that God gave you a daughter, like that's
a
kind of-
cultural.
it's a cultural thing, and I think it's very insulting.
Yeah.
The fact that God gave you this child, right? It's just really disrespectful, insulting, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
That's still happening.
And it's still happening, right?
Yeah.
So, and there's many other things that happen in our culture that go against religion, but we're still apparently one of the most religious countries in the world.
Yeah.
So I really think it's the culture that's kind of the problem. There's just really backward notions and things.
And people blame it on the religion.
Yes, I do think that the progressives in Pakistan have a lot of work to do in their overall belief system, because they do point a lot of fingers towards religion.
Yeah.
It's not religion that's the problem. In all societies, any nation that has been underdeveloped has very similar issues of child marriage,
Yes.
of slavery. They have issues of inequality between genders. It's seen across the board in nations that have been Christian,
Yeah.
Hindu, Muslim, doesn't matter. It's usually the case is it's your country is economically underdeveloped. You have Muslims in the UAE, and you see equality here. You see how women are treated. It's one of the safest places in the world
Absolutely.
for women. You cannot even imagine, like, you can just go out at night.
Yeah.
Whatever, you're safe, right? Pakistan is a Muslim country too,
Yeah.
right? Totally different story. Religion has
Same
nothing
religion.
to do with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
I think that's a really great point. The other day, my friends and I came back from the Trevor Noah show, and that ended at 11 p.m. at night from Abu Dhabi. And so we were driving back to Dubai, which for context is like a 1.5 hour drive.
Yeah.
Stopped at a gas station. Gas stations are notoriously, even in America, known to be very dangerous. It's like a hub for, kidnapping women. Stopped at a gas station. We're drinking our chai, having our noodles, just standing outside our car in whatever outfits everyone was wearing. And we just felt like there's no other country that, as 4 women grown at 2 a.m, we would be able to do that. We felt so safe. So yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to the UAE for that.
Absolutely. And there's this comparison that a lot of people make online,
Yeah.
liberals specifically, where they show a map of countries that are the most religious and overlay it with GDP per capita, which means
Yeah.
basically how rich your nation is. And they
Okay.
typically try to show a correlation between the less religious you are, the more richer you're likely to be. But
Okay.
then again, you look at the Middle East, kind of bypasses this stereotype, right? So again, I think liberals, progressives in general really need to look at the fact that religion is not a lot of times put the blame on religion with many
Yeah.
things. I am a Muslim person. I think a lot of my friends, I don't say the F word. I don't cuss like that. Okay. One of the biggest goal in my life is to serve people, is to serve
Yeah.
my own people. Any business that I do, it's always one of the biggest objectives is how can you service people better? How can you make God happy? Inherently, me being religious is better for the world than if I was an atheist.
Better for the economy. I agree.
Exactly. Right. But
That's such an interesting point, that it's more better for you to be that than an atheist who would probably believe in nothing.
Yeah. And again, you can be an atheist, and I totally respect you equally as I would respect anyone else, but it's just the matter that believing in a religion is perfect, but the person who's practicing it is not perfect, right? And I think we in our culture are some of the most imperfect practitioners of such a
Agreed.
beautiful religion.
Agreed.
because you see the same thing again. Like you've lived so long in the UAE and in the Middle East.
Yeah.
You've traveled more than me, of course, and you see a totally different dynamic.
Yeah, and I know not to blame it on the religion. It's definitely the culture that each country or society brings. So where do you think our culture comes from? Is it a lack of education?
I think it's lack of education, and I think of course there's a correlation between underdeveloped societies and then having more backwards beliefs.
Okay.
So it's just purely a consequence of that, I think, and perhaps some of it has to do with the fact that we were colonized as well. Not saying they're totally to blame, but
I think that's a really good point. Would you say, based on the stats that you've seen, colonized countries, like, can you tell us something about that?
okay, so this is a very interesting debate. There's a lot of people that say that if the British had not colonized South Asia, we would have been much better off. But I was just showing my mother a picture of Karachi when the Brits were still there in the 1800s. Yeah. And it was just so beautiful compared to like what it is now, right? People do blame it on the fact that, okay, they built a lot of irrigation systems and dams. Punjab, I don't know if you know this, but it was a desert mostly before the Brits came.
Didn't know that.
It turned green because of the fact they built massive irrigation system. Pakistan still right now has the biggest irrigation system anywhere in the world, bigger than Russia. So that increased agricultural production by like, I don't know how many folds. It just massively boosted it. Population, how do you determine how big a country is going to be in terms of population? By how much arable land you have. So India is the most populous country in the world because they have the most land where you can produce food on.
Gotcha.
Right? Okay, so even more than the US. But so that happened in Pakistan. So you had an area that was moderately populated, that was okay. But then there was this massive boom of food production, and then you have so many more people coming into the mix, right? And that becomes really hard to manage. Overpopulation is extremely, extremely hard to manage and to grow an economy when you have more people than you can provide for.
Wow.
So that leads to, again, so many issues like civil unrest, lack of education, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. I think that's definitely there.
That's very powerful what you just said. You definitely make that a real.
Thank you. Well, Kiran, it was an amazing conversation. I wish we could have taken this for much longer. And,
thank you so much for having me. I'm so proud of your podcast. I think you're really highlighting key issues and topics that other people aren't talking about and making the internet a brain rot free place.
I hope so, definitely. Thank you so much for inspiring me about all this.
Definitely.
All right.
All right.